Good morning, self-sourced family. Welcome to your bonus rounds. So today I'm here with Shani from Native Nude. Shani is also in our self-sourced family too. And we're going to be talking about female-bodied, full-bodied pleasure. I had a bit of an epiphany moment the other day when I realized I want to have sessions for all bodies today and next Tuesday. So I hope that it pleases you that I added an extra session. I was like, let's please everyone. So you can receive this session like a podcast. You can have your video on, you can have your video off. I like to see some of your faces, so thank you for having your video on, the ones who are around. But really you can just receive this. It's going to be information to you, and then there'll be a Q&A as well, where you can ask both Shani and I questions about this topic. And so wherever you are, I'd love to just bring you into the space with a little bit of a breathing exercise. It should take about 2 minutes. So I'm inviting you to close your eyes if you feel safe to. I want to invite you to inhale through the mouth as if you're sipping a drink through a long straw. So you're going to inhale through the mouth. Let the inhalation be long and strong. Send the breath down to the base of the body. And on the exhalation, you're going to exhale through the mouth with a wide jaw as if you're fogging a mirror. Inhaling through the mouth through a straw. And exhaling, widening the jaw, releasing the jaw. And I want you to continue with this breath for a few more rounds. And while you're doing so, I want you to get curious about any tension that's in your mouth. And on your next exhalation, I want to invite you to come back to your own natural breath. And you're going to explore the inside of your mouth with your tongue. Almost as if you were giving the inside of your mouth a massage with your tongue. You can explore the inside of your mouth, the gums. Really allowing yourself to be massaged on the inside of the mouth with the tongue here. And see if you can slow it down. And while you're doing this, I want to share with you that the inside of the mouth, the flesh on the inside of the mouth, is exactly the same as the flesh on the inside of a vaginal canal. If you're a female-bodied person, you might even be able to stimulate certain nerve endings in your vulva by massaging certain parts of the inside of your mouth. And if you're male-bodied, you can just play with how this affects you too. Maybe there's a connection here with your own roots and the inside of your mouth. And the length of the tongue, actually, in traditional Chinese medicine, is the same nerve constellation, the same skin, the same muscle groups as the penis as well. So you can already bring in the awareness of the parallel here. We have two sets of genitals in the body, you could say. And wherever you are, allowing the tongue to relax. Just seeing how supple you can be at the base of the tongue. How relaxed can you be at the base of the tongue? And just knowing that the base of the tongue is the seat of the vagus nerve. And as we begin exploring resensitizing our body in this course and really opening up the body to full body pleasure, we're going to become very intimate with this nerve in our body. This nerve that travels all along the front column of the body, from the throat all the way down to the perineum. And the more relaxed you can be at the base of the tongue, the more you can bring in an energized presence and subtle activation of your vagus nerve. So just breathing here, and seeing how relaxed you can be at the base of the tongue. And my invitation for you as you're listening is to see how relaxed you can be in the jaw. And see how relaxed you can be in the hips while you receive this information. You can open the eyes. Good morning. So let's dive in. Shani, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm already just feeling like fully in the body. I'm sure everyone's feeling so landed after that. And I'll quickly introduce myself, but I'm going to save all the time to actually go into all the juicy information, because that's what we really want to hear about today. But yeah, when I was at rock bottom, self-pleasure was my reclamation, and particularly internal orgasms, because it's the person you have to become to go into that full safety, that full surrender, which is why I've become so passionate about teaching, going back into the body. And through that, I've studied womb sciences, yoni massage, sacred sexuality, and currently studying with Layla Martin. So yeah, this is a really, really passionate topic of mine, and really going to dive deep. And I'm going to almost go down to the basics of how to do this. And what I first want to focus on is really the kind of resistance that I see come up and almost the game changers. So kind of the groundwork before we go into the really technical, the where do we find the G-spot, where do we find the cervix, and then actually techniques on how to stimulate it. And where I see the groundwork coming in is really this topic of slowing down, which is super simple. It's a lot about what this course is all about, is slowing down and coming back into the body. But what that really allows us to do is to focus on these subtle sensations in the body, which soon become the big sensations and become that full body orgasm. So it's really about slowing down and bringing real big intention into the body, especially in this masculine society that we live in. It's very much competition, win, achieve, perform. How do we go this fast pace, which is often where we can get quite roped into just a quick clit orgasm, get quite roped into just going straight for the sex center. Whatever gender you're in, you experience some kind of form of the masculine society, of this pressure to perform, or this pressure to experience this deep orgasm. So it's really about slowing down and bringing it back into the body. And the reason this is so important when it comes to full body cervical orgasm is that a female body takes around 40 minutes to actually go into this deep orgasmic state, and a male takes around 7 minutes. So you can see why really warming up the female body is super important for this deep orgasmic state. So it's a sense of slowing down, really bringing it into the body. And the next topic that I want to bring in is really focusing on this whole body sensation. So when we're wanting to go deep into these orgasms, it's a lot more than just focusing on kind of localized sensation. It's more like bringing it all around the body. So focusing on the whole body is also a way to slow down. So if you think, especially if we're talking self-pleasure now, when there's partner pleasure going on, there's a lot of kissing, there's a lot of intimacy, there's a lot of touching. So those 40 minutes are racking up pretty quickly, right? So the body is getting turned on. When it comes to stimulating self, there can be this quick, like just going straight for it. So how do we actually build and incorporate the whole body to allow ourselves to be ready for these G-spot orgasms, cervical orgasms, because that's massively energetic. That goes beyond just physical stimulation. It goes into actually energy buildup. So focusing on whole body is going to be kind of the groundwork to building up the energy in the body so that the body can surrender into that, because it's ready, it wants it, it's craving it as much as you want it. So it's about going into whole body, particularly in female bodies, focusing on breasts. So this is applies for male body, female body, but focusing on breasts and stimulation. Reason for that is that it's a heart opener. So one is going to open the heart, but then it also deeply opens the womb, the vulva. So it actually prepares you for penetration. So if you're someone who likes your breast stimulated, it's not just that you like that. There's actually kind of like a biological wiring in you. Now, we're all wired so differently. So it's important for you to really find what works for your own body. Maybe there's a different kind of place that you like, but stimulating the breast opens the yoni, the vulva, the vaginal canal to be ready for penetration, as well as the throat. So Melissa has already done a really beautiful embodiment. The throat is such a representation of the womb. So what we want to do is get that womb really relaxed. So doing this breath work, starting that, whether it's by yourself or with a partner, of actually getting this relaxation to be ready to open, to be ready to surrender. So really tapping in from the throat all the way to the root chakra, which is actually the cervix. So that could look like, while kissing is so good, is it's also, if you think about it, your jaw is moving, so you're relaxing the body. Our bodies are really incredible. So what you want to focus on if you're alone is actually maybe like moving the jaw, whether it's rolling around and sounding and like really getting the energy open, allowing your body to get ready to receive, to go into deep orgasm. And when focusing on whole body, what I really want to touch on here is consent and permission, because the basis of any kind of real deep orgasmic bliss is the sense of safety. So often we focus on consent with partners, like, does this feel good? Are you ready for penetration? That roots down to how we do that with ourselves. So when you are in this place of self-sourcing, it's the sense of, do you want to be penetrated? Do you want to be entered? Maybe your breast wants more stimulation. Maybe you want to look in the mirror and dance and turn yourself on. And the more you develop this consent with self, the more you develop safety, because your body starts to resemble, when you say no, you listen. And when you say yes, your body's naturally going to flow deeper into the safety, and it's naturally going to flow deeper into this deeper orgasm. And then lastly, which is all what Tantra is really based around, is this breath, sound, and movement. So really focusing on breath with self, with partner, you can focus on syncing breath. And what that's going to do is either deepen the orgasm. So it's going to really stimulate this energy all throughout the body. So it's actually going to deepen and help you get to that point of orgasm. Or what it's going to do is actually help you gently flow through the resistance, flow through the emotional blockages, flow through the kind of experiences that hold us back, that's not being worthy. So the breath is going to support you in that. Then you want to focus on sound, which is, again, the jaw. It's almost this reclamation. So many of us have been silenced, suppressed. We don't believe we can orgasm. Such a question from so many of my clients is, can I do it? And everyone can do it. We've just been silenced. So voicing that, claiming it, almost getting this wild expression of self to almost turn yourself on through that. So you want to sound, because that's also going to deepen orgasm. And then movement. So allowing your body to move and guide. And the biggest kind of breakthrough I see with movement is changing positions. So what can happen is we can get to this place of being able to orgasm one way, and then we struggle when we go with a partner because it's not the same way. So what we want to be able to do is actually focus on self-sourcing in different positions, learning how to orgasm, G-spot orgasm, cervical orgasm, in all these different positions, because it comes so much easier when you're sharing that with a partner. So that's kind of three bases of the groundwork I see, being slowing down, really focusing on whole body, and then really focusing on this breath, movement, and sound to support you. So maybe you just want to take a big breath in and a big breath out. Just allow that all to land. And a big breath in and a big breath out. And now to focus on internal orgasm, what that looks like, how do we explore that in the body, is really the sense of this greater awakening, really getting in touch with all of our sensations, allowing us to really create this deep surrender and this deep safety in self. That's where I see the root of all these orgasms coming from. It's often the biggest resistance is coming through the surrender and the safety. And we're all in different parts of our journey here. So I just really want to bring light to that whether you're in this place of experiencing numbness, maybe it's pain, maybe it's already deep orgasmic bliss, that also flows throughout life. It's not that we experience numbness and then we break through it and we're all through this orgasmic bliss. We flow through life, whether it's our experiences with a partner, with self, anything. So I just want to really bring to light that if you are in that place of numbness or pain, you can totally awaken through that into this deep orgasm. That's a topic of its own, so I'm not going to talk on that too much, but I wanted to bring that to light because it's something that so many of my clients come forward with. And I just want to almost mention how common it is, that it's something that is not normal, but it has become normalized because we are so disconnected. So everything that is in the self-source course is bringing us to this deeper connection of self. So going into internal orgasm is really almost this like personal journey of who you have to become to surrender and to really open up to this. And I'm not going to focus too much on a clitoral orgasm because a lot of us know already how to do that. There's actually too much focus on that. But the clitoris is obviously outside the vagina. If you look at the top of the labia and you've got the clitoral hood, right? So if you lift that up and you stimulate the clitoris, you're bound to get a clitoral orgasm. It's got 8,000 nerve endings. You could do that while watching Netflix. There doesn't need much presence to it. It's often like a 5-second orgasm, and it's not particularly this like deep fulfilling, although it is beautiful. So I'm going to focus more on the internal and how we can actually bring the clitoris into internal to deepen the internal orgasm. So if we start with the G-spot orgasm, I'm first going to start where the G-spot actually is, because so often we want good lovers, we want to be good lovers, but good lovers are not born, right? We taught. So many of us don't actually know where our G-spot is, and that's also totally okay. So the G-spot is, if you had to imagine the vaginal canal, it's about a knuckle deep in, up towards the belly. So up towards the stomach is where the G-spot is, about a knuckle in, up towards the belly. And it feels like a different texture. So it almost feels like a bit of a walnut. It's got a different texture to around it. Every single female body is different. So some protrude out a little bit more. Some are kind of like a little bit more in the body. So you've almost got to feel your way around and really allow yourself to play and to allow yourself to experience this different kind of feeling in the body. If you think you're on the G-spot and you want to be sure, like, is this the G-spot? I would encourage you to stimulate the clitoris, because what the clitoris will do is it will send blood flow deeper to the G-spot, and that's actually going to engorge it. So it's going to get bigger. So this is often why many women like to have the clitoris stimulated while having penetration, because it's actually deepening and it's almost awakening the G-spot even more. So if you like that, there's no shame in it. You're allowed to have the clitoris stimulated. For some women, it depends on how far the clitoris is from the vaginal opening. So some naturally their clitoris might be stimulated while having penetration. So this is really good to know, that you might want to stimulate the clitoris to deepen that G-spot orgasm. Now the G-spot can have quite a firm, deep, like pressure to it. So this is often where you almost going, if you like want to be ravished, and it's that kind of fast pace. It likes this deep, it can take that. The G-spot is, you almost want to play around with that, and I would encourage really getting to know it. You'll see that it almost likes this firm, consistent movement, and the G-spot is also responsible for squirting. So this all comes from the G-spot. So it can take that really deep, firm, consistent movement, and there's a whole session on squirting, so I'm not going to go too deep into that because of time, but it's almost this real deep, firm movement to the G-spot, and what that does is it almost activates the bladder. So it allows you to penetrate through that at this firm, deep, consistent movement, and then ejaculate will come through the urethra. It is not urine. That's often a question, but how you will know if you're on the brink of squirting is you might feel the sensation of like, wait, I'm going to wet the bed, and you're probably not going to. You're probably on the brink of squirting, so there'll be this feeling of I'm going to wet the bed, or you might feel a little bit of like pressure or pain. So you never want to force yourself through this pain, but if you're on this point of feeling like a bit of pressure, you're probably getting really close to actually squirting. So again, you always want to honor your body. You always want to listen. You can build yourself up to that. It often happens in that deep surrender of actually removing the goal of orgasm, of removing the goal of squirting. So many will get on the brink of that, and then they get into the mind of like, okay, I'm going to do it now, I'm going to do it now, and then boom, it goes. So we almost want to release this like sense of just being with what is and allowing yourself to really just get familiar and to get comfortable. So that's really going to be focusing on the G-spot. Often what can help you with the G-spot is putting a pillow under your lower back just to kind of raise you, because you can imagine a knuckle in right to the belly, especially if you're having partnered penetration with a male body. You almost want to be tilted up a little bit so you can kind of hit the G-spot during penetration. But there's also so many tools that you can use for this. So I definitely encourage using your fingers, because it's going to allow you to actually find it and locate it and to explore it. And then when you're wanting to go deeper, you can start to look at things like pleasure ones, or, you know, practicing with a partner. So it's really interesting. Yoni massage is an incredible tool of really discovering the G-spot. And I would recommend this as well by yourself and also with a partner. So even yoni massage from a partner, being like, okay, that's the G-spot. Once your partner locates the G-spot with his fingers, it's so much easier to keep going into that. So allowing that to really go self or with partner, and really activating the G-spot, allowing it to waken, and then going deeper and deeper into the sensation of squirting. Now, if we move on, maybe have a quick breath just to allow the G-spots to land, give gratitude for all the pleasure and all the juiciness that the G-spot brings us, allowing that to land. Tell me if I need to speak a little bit slower as well. South Africans speak really fast. And then we're going to move on to the cervix. So the cervical orgasm is always a big question, always a big mystery. Can everyone do it? Yes. So it's really about, again, awakening the body. The cervix is, if you had to imagine the vaginal canal, it's at the top, right? It kind of feels like the nose. So if you had to feel the nose, that is what your cervix or your partner's cervix or any lover's cervix, future lover, that's what the cervix feels like. So it feels like the nose. So if you imagine going up the vaginal canal, it's all the way at the end. So that is what you will be feeling during penetration with a pleasure wand, with a partner. And the cervix is really the gateway, and it's a huge energetic center for female bodies. So if you had to imagine the role that it plays in the body, it stops anything going into the uterus that shouldn't be there, and it stops anything leaving that shouldn't go out. So it will open slightly during ovulation, during menstruation, it will open fully during birth, but other than that, the cervix is closed. But if you can imagine that role of stopping anything going out and stopping anything going in, there's a lot of energy passing there, right? So what happens is the cervix starts to build a lot of energy. It starts to really hold a lot of emotions. So the biggest block that I see with cervical orgasms and the resistance is actually the sense of releasing that. So the cervix's role during penetration, or particularly where the physical role of fertilization, the cervix is actually meant to move like this. So it's really meant to move down. It's meant to welcome whatever's coming in. And it really is meant to actually invite the sperm, bring it up, and that's how fertilization happens. So it almost welcomes any guest, whether it's fingers, whether it's a lingam, whether it's a pleasure wand, it's welcoming that in, and it's meant to move. What happens is the more we become resistant, the more we suppress our sexuality, the more disconnected we become, it starts to kind of go like this. It gets tighter and tighter. It holds the emotion. So then it becomes like this, and it's hard. And that is why so many female bodies will say, why is sex so painful? Why is my cervix so painful? If you look at the rate of HPV as well, it's all this hard lack of releasing. So what I really want to encourage with the cervix, it's actually about really untapping these emotions and these experiences that we store within, bringing real deep life into it. And you're on the right course for that, because it's all through breath work. It's all through beliefs. It's all through actually releasing what the body is storing and allowing us to feel into that pleasure. The cervix, unlike the G-spot, is really soft. It likes a lot more like a subtle sensation, and allow your body to guide you. Let's be honest, everyone loves to be ravished as well. So if you're in the mood and your cervix is like going for it and wants that full-on penetration, allow that. But just know that it often tends to be that like awakening. So if it's really tense and it's got a lot of emotion stored, it's not going to enjoy that. So you almost want to get it to this really soft moving place, and then that's going to allow you to deepen your cervical orgasms. So a way to start really awakening the cervix is through yoni massage, through exploring, through really gentle touch, and allowing to bring that movement back into it. You can use fingers. It can be a little bit harder to use fingers with the cervix. It can be quite uncomfortable to reach it. It's also, everyone's vaginal canal is different lengths. So it's going to be up to you to explore your body if that feels good, or you want to look at a pleasure wand or a partner, but just going really deep, slow movements with the cervix. So that's often a lot more like the slower, deep, which will actually take you into full body orgasm. So the cervix is responsible for full body orgasm. So where the link between that is actually awakening the cervix and allowing it to get into this deep sense of pleasure, and then taking this localized sensation, the cervix, the root chakra, and now start to move that energy through the body. So if you are self, you want to move that through with breath. If you with partner, maybe you want to start to sync breath. So you're going to really start to deepen that through breath, movement, sound. And as you're moving that around the body, you're going to go into a deep state of full body orgasm. The biggest kind of block to full body orgasm is focusing just on the physical. So it's this mindset of trying to do all the right things to get this going in our body. Whereas that is kind of this deeper surrender. It's this deeper sense of safety. It's massively energetic, which is, you're probably all on that level already because you're here at Self-Sourced. But it's a sense of bringing this energy into pleasure. It's a sense of bringing whatever resonates with you to pleasure, spirituality, this kind of emotional connection. So it's actually a deeper sense of surrender into it. And I believe that this pleasure, and particularly going into the cervical and the full body orgasm, is the biggest route to self-development, because life force energy doesn't lie. It brings up shadow work. It brings up personal development. It brings up beliefs. It's like it's almost this person you've got to become to have this full body orgasm. And that's why I believe there's such a crave for it. There's such a hunger for it in the world, because that's our natural state of being. And that's what we all want. We all just want to like relax into the sense of allowing ourselves that. So it's really a journey of allowing us to build that up and start really slow, honor your body, and then move into the different pleasure sensations and allow yourself to take it on that journey and work through all these deeper things to allow yourself to really surrender into that and almost uncondition, unravel. And once we become that, we become a lot more open to deeper internal orgasms. And yeah, Mel, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that, Melissa. Anything that's coming up for you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, so much information. That was really, really incredible. Um, yeah, so I'd like to add a nuanced perspective about sound. And this may or may not resonate with you, but I feel like in my work with female-bodied people, I feel like I've encountered a lot of women who are really in their wild woman archetype, or super, super, super expressive in their sexuality, and like super loud, and somehow don't have access yet to this kind of energetic, subtle body presence that's required for cervical orgasms. And so actually, I don't tend to give the same common advice to all female-bodied people when it comes to turning on that kind of awareness. Because for some women, and for some female-bodied people, and also for myself, actually that state of just squishy, soft, silent surrender really requires silence somehow. Yeah, that's really a culmination of my own experience and being a sex worker and working, doing body work with female-bodied people, and also really just recognizing this very common wound in women that are super expressive, you know, like their like throat chakra is super wide open, but there's also like a wide open and also overused. In Ayurveda, we call it mitsayaga, like the misuse of the tool. And that's a kind of a nuanced piece I wanted to add, because I feel like there are very many different experiences of sexual liberation, and for some women, sexual liberation may not be the bigness and the wildness, even though, you know, for centuries and for eons we've been silenced, so of course it makes sense to be wild and loud. And I am curious about how using toning, how using the voice can also be a form of disassociation to create a sense of safety, you know? Yeah. I'm so curious what your own personal experience of cervical awakening is for you as well. Do you feel like you'd like to share about that?
Definitely. And thank you for mentioning that, Melissa. It's super important that we all wired so differently. So get to know your body in what feels good. And definitely, as soon as you feel yourself getting to this place of force, you're going against your natural state. So thank you, yeah, for really mentioning that, because I find the sense of sounding is really powerful in kind of getting the awakening going. But the cervical awakening is a lot more of like a silent kind of inward, full body just kind of going. But yeah, I've had a couple really big cervical awakenings, and I think there's a lot of power in them, and there's a sense that they can actually go out throughout our life. So often people speak of this, like, you know, this big awakening, but it can happen so many times. Like just 3 weeks I had a really, really insane awakening that released a pattern that has just been like repeating and repeating and repeating in my life. And through a really big cervical awakening, I was actually able to bring light to that and to release it. So for me, it started, my journey with the big like cervical awakenings was probably about 3 years ago. And it was really tapping into this energy body, tapping into this reclamation. And through me actually going into my cervix was where a lot of my unraveling went. And I held a lot of shame and guilt around sexuality. So my awakening was a big reclamation. And I was almost forced into actually going down this route, because I was working through deep diagnoses. I was working through a lot of childhood trauma that was all rooted in sexuality. So my awakening was little snippets of the journey. And then through that awakening, I healed my body completely from those diagnoses, and I reclaimed what sexuality meant. So it's been like an ongoing process and a lot of discipline, a real lot of discipline of sometimes, you know, going into states of being when maybe I was resistant to it, and understanding that sometimes pleasure is just a full body massage in front of the mirror. You know, like that's part of a cervical awakening, because we're teaching the sense of safety. So there's, to me, I see the cervical awakening in these whole little different ways of like bringing life and energy into that. So yeah, that kind of what comes up to me is this way of, it's all these like subtle little beings, and then there are those explosive times, but the subtle ones are just as important as they're explosive.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was just really curious about your experience. Yeah, and this is why this notion of becoming resensitized is really important. It's really why for me I feel there's a personal parallel between tapping into full body orgasmicness and celibacy, that in order to actually recognize that you're having a full body orgasm, it kind of might be necessary to not have intense peak orgasms for at least a little while, so that you can actually recognize when it's happening. Because not to get too meta, but I really believe that like when we come out of the womb, it's just so incredible to know that if you come out of through the womb, you get anointed on the crown with cervical fluid that's like incredibly conducive to supporting your immune system. So any child that's given birth through the cervix is like literally blessed. Like the cervix gives the child a high five, like, here you go, have a nice life, have an orgasmic life. And so on a physiological level, like the mucus of the cervix is just incredibly healing. And so, you know, I really feel like there's so much that's happening in our body all the time. That baby that's anointed by that cervix mucus is the most orgasmic being. Like, we're not humans having orgasms, we're orgasmic beings remembering our nature. So I really feel like our true nature is having, you know, it's almost like our true nature is orgasmicness. And so many things happen that get in the way of us remembering that, like conditioning, expectation, trauma, like so many things get in the way, you know, like social media, people, like city life, so many things get in the way of information that is already there. So for me, you know, having access to full body orgasms, whatever gender you are, whatever set of genitals you have, is really about, you know, it may have already happened to you and you may not have been able to feel it because there were so many other things happening on top. Yeah. So, So I want to open up the floor for a Q and A. If anybody has a question they'd like to ask Shani and also myself, like we might just both answer you. Please raise your hand or send a question into the chat. Raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Jules, I'll unmute you.
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was really educational. I guess my question is about the hardened cervix, which really makes a lot of sense, and I almost like really feel. And you say yoni massage helps for that. My question is, if I don't, without going to a yoni practitioner or having a partner who can do that or wants to learn, how can we do it to ourselves?
Melissa, do you want to take it, or do you want me to carry on rolling?
It's a good one. I think what I'll do is if I want to add something, I'll respond after you, if that feels right for you.
Nice. Cool. So thank you so much for the question, Jules. And such a great point, because a lot of it comes into, even where there is partnership, I still recommend yoni massage with self, because we can become reliant on our partners to source our pleasure all the time, you know? So like there's tension in the cervix, like the partner needs to fix it. So regardless of partnership, I recommend self yoni massage. A practitioner, I would only recommend if you have this deep sense of safety and trust and maybe referred. You have to be mindful of where you are having a yoni massage by a practitioner. But what I love most about yoni massage with self is you can return to that at any time, because our cervix is alive and it's a breathing, right? So when I went through that 3 weeks ago, the reason I went through it is I noticed I was so tense and I was like, what is going on here? And it was my cervix wanting to actually release something. So we go through these ins and outs. So the yoni massage, and the way that you can really do it by yourself is incorporating whole body. I am actually busy writing a guide on how to do yoni massage. So it's incorporating whole body. And then what it is starting from the outside in, really gently asking permission, and then starting to go. So what the yoni massage essentially is actually almost going clockwise up the vagina canal, stopping on every single little point and feeling and breathing into that. So is there numbness? Is there pleasure? Is there pain? Because sometimes people will speak of numbness, but it's not the entire vaginal canal that's numb. It's just a part of it. You know, it's very common that sometimes there's a left side or a right side. One's like left side's numb, right side's full of pleasure. So it's just how we've kind of built. So really going clockwise up to that. And then that's where I would say use your fingers. And then that's where I would recommend a pleasure wand, which is actually what I do at Native Nude. So I wouldn't recommend a vibrator for yoni massage. And the reason for that is a vibrator is really high intensive, even for the clitoris. So the way dildos and vibrators actually operate is stimulating the clitoris because it's a quick result. So you're guaranteed to orgasm. But what that does is it's really sensitive tissue and muscles, and it stimulates it to get what you want, but then it starts to slowly desensitize and numb. So I would recommend, I can show you the pleasure ones, but it's also, if you're not called to the pleasure ones, any kind of tool that isn't vibrating, and to allow you to really start to massage with that. The reason the crystal pleasure ones are so good is that they retain heat. So if you can imagine like a full body massage, that warmth, like how good that feels, it retains heat. And instead of fingers, it's a little bit bigger. So it almost spreads the sensation. So it clears the energy rather than just fingers, which are a lot more smaller. So it can clear the energy. And then it allows you to get to all the parts where you can't reach yourself. So for me, my yoni massage was with a crystal pleasure wand to allow you to do that yourself. And then you can come to that at any time. I hope that answers the question. Melissa, if you want to jump on, or I can show the ones, whatever feels good.
Yeah, I'll add to this. Yeah, so I actually feel that it's more important to have a self-practice with this, because really the de-armoring that might need to happen is not necessarily the de-armoring, the physical de-armoring of the walls of your vagina. It may literally be the de-armoring of the disconnect between your heart and your between your mind and your heart and your pussy. So it's like being able to really locate, okay, so I'm applying tension on the left side of my wall. Can I really feel that where my finger is? So it's really the beautiful thing about using your finger to de-armor yourself, or using a wand to de-armor yourself, and really having that practice under your own hand, is first of all, you're undoing years of mishandling at your own hands, if that's something that's been in your lineage. And then you're also really beginning to connect those dots. So actually, I feel it's more important to have your own practice, even if you can afford to see a therapist once a week or something. Ultimately, the most, like, in my opinion, the lock and key to cervical orgasms is unraveling codependency. And when I say that, it's like, in order to have a cervical orgasm, it's really necessary to understand that it's for you, and to really understand that when you're having sex, you're really to really allow yourself to really say, this is for me, this is for nobody else. I am not using sexuality as a tool to get what I want. I am not sexualizing love to please my partner. I am not using my body in any way. I am making a conscious decision to undo any habits around this. So perhaps my response isn't so like anatomical of the things that you can do to de-armor yourself. Perhaps what I'm interested in is like the ways in which you can de-armor the chambers of your mind in relation to your cervix, and that is work that you need to do. That's work that a practitioner is not going to do for you. Whew. Yeah, and I think I'll take a deep breath. Back to you, Shani.
Do we have any more questions? Kimberly, I think we've got a question there. What a few.
Hello, thank you so much. Like, this was so mind-blowing. All the information, it was like overwhelming, and I learned so much already. I have another question. So, coming from like a place of trauma, would you suggest like any specific like crystal wands or like any practices to kind of like get yourself out of that rut, so to speak, or like kind of that hole? Like how can you, what practice can you suggest someone to like get them moving in a way?
Definitely. I first just wanted to take a moment to honor you, you know, for speaking up and voicing that. And trauma is a big thing, you know, and we've all experienced some trauma on some level, but it can really root deep in the womb. And I also come from a place of trauma, so I just want to honor you because I know the journey that takes to unravel. So yes, there is definitely the crystal that I would recommend for trauma is particularly black obsidian, but we can always talk offline. It also depends where you are on your kind of unearthing and unraveling, because black obsidian can bring up a lot. So it almost like unearths the shadow work. It can bring up a lot of experiences, and the dark side isn't always bad, because the dark side is also that like erotic, curious, playful side. But if this is something like where you really want to get comfortable with, say, yoni massage, with tapping in, then I recommend starting with a gentle crystal first. So either pink aventurine, white jade, rose quartz, something that's a little bit more getting comfortable with the practice before you're going deep into this unraveling. So a good example of that is I first worked with the other crystals, and I've been going into black obsidian lately, which is why I had that deep, clear cervical awakening that was releasing this repeating trend from the trauma, but I was ready for that then. That would have been quite overwhelming if I had started with that. So I would recommend to tune into your body. If your body is like black obsidian, yes, let's go, I'm like ready to go straight to the root, then always just trust your body. Like ask good questions, you know, what is it ready for? There's different shapes of pleasure ones that you can get. So especially when it comes from trauma, asking those questions is like part of the biggest reclamation, you know, like gaining that sense of trust in self again. Like what pleasure one do you want? What crystal do you want? And then taking it really slow. And as Melissa was saying, that's essentially why I had that 1.5 years. So really allowing yourself to deeply root in self, because once that kind of unravels, then you're able to go from a place sometimes even stronger than before the trauma. You know, sometimes that's what almost really allows us to unravel. Does that answer the question? Does that kind of bring anything else up for you, Kimberly?
Yeah, like you were talking about shapes, and I was wondering like what kind of shape would you suggest? And plus, you ship worldwide with your wands.
Yeah, I do ship worldwide. Melissa, there's been a question for shapes. Are you happy for me to just quickly show the ones, and then I can kind of speak a little bit deeper into it? So the first one is kind of the curve wand. This is the one, they all come in different crystals. This is for yoni massage particularly. The reason is it's tapered, so the one side is a little bit thinner and the other end is thicker. So you can feel when your body's ready. It can also be used for self-pleasure, but this is kind of like a really gentle way of going into the massage. It's a lot more of going into the walls of the canal more than this like fuller feel of penetration. The curve is also quite feminine. So especially where there's been trauma, this can be really beautiful in healing that relationship with masculine energy, with lingam, and it also could be even with females, just with sexuality, right? So there's a sense of really reclaiming that through the crescent wand. This is also really great for anal. So because it's tapered, this is also for anal awakening, is the crescent wand. And then there's the petite one, which is also thinner, which can be used for yoni massage as well, also tapered and thinner. I'm going to kind of give a quick run through so we can get through questions, and then I can also share the Instagram and the site where you can read up in depth. The lunar wand is the best for G-spot. So how it's designed is that it's got this bulb. So what the bulb does is it almost makes it really impossible to miss G-spot. So as you put it in up, it's going to hit the G-spot. So it allows you to like really softly and slowly awaken that. And then again, you've got two really different sides. This will also reach cervix. So the bulb is really nice because it allows, especially if the cervix is really tense and hard, this allows you to have that bulb to actually like gently start to awaken the cervix. So that's the lunar wand. Then the native wand, again, this is also really beautiful. So this is obviously the most representational of the lingam. So again, really powerful. It's a lot more of a thicker, fuller feel. And again, you can hit the G-spot at an angle and the cervix. And then it's also the tied wand. So this is the last wand. This is more of like, I would say the most kind of like advancement, because it will hit the G-spot while stimulating the clitoris. So this is mainly around squirting, and especially in the Black Obsidian, it's more around the squirting, kind of opening that erotic side. And then again, it will hit the cervix as well. So what I would encourage is, that's a really quick rundown, because I just want to be mindful of the time, but to allow yourself to feel into, your body might have already said like, yes, that's the one. Otherwise, go onto the website and read about the crystal, the actual shapes of the ones and the crystals. And then you'll know like, okay, cool, this is the property I'm feeling. This is the one I'm feeling. And then that will allow you to go deeper into that yoni massage at a rate that feels good for you. And I would say also follow your body, but rather start kind of smaller and slower and work your way up if that feels good. Any other question? All good. Yes.
Yeah, I have two questions. I mean, one is like regarding the crystals, because I was actually also interested in getting like the yoni egg. So I was, I was questioning what is the difference and what is like the advantage of the egg. Yeah.
Cool. So so the yoni egg is really powerful in strengthening and relaxing the vaginal canal. So where the crystals are more around kind of actively using the wand while you kind of have this intention with it, you're actively going, and it can also lead into pleasure. What the yoni egg is around is actually inserting it with intention. I always recommend having the yoni egg with intention. Some people say like put it in and then you can go to the shops and come back. You want to kind of bring intention to what you're doing all the time. What the yoni egg does is it allows you to strengthen. So there's different exercises that you can do as well as relax. So there's such a focus on like having a tight vagina and strengthening the pelvic floor. It's incredibly dangerous. A deep full body orgasm happens from a place of relaxation. So what the yoni egg allows you to do is actually practice this kind of contracting, this strengthening, but then the deep relaxation. So where yoni egg is important is to focus on the relaxation, and then once you remove it, to kind of bask in that relaxation, and that allows you to in time deepen your orgasm as well. So it also, the egg will kind of naturally move up the vaginal canal. You can also have one that is drilled where you have a string and you can kind of like pull down and like contract and then release it. So there's different exercises that you can do, but I would say the yoni egg's more of like you would insert it and bring more intention, more visualization, more like practical embodiment exercises. The yoni one is a lot more pleasure focused. So you're still bringing all the intention, but you're actually focusing on pleasure. You're focusing on stimulating, probably going into orgasm. But also a yoni egg can be used during self-pleasure for orgasm as well. That's also really powerful. So I don't know, Melissa, if you've had experience, like if you want to share your thoughts on a yoni egg.
You asking me or Melissa?
Melissa, I'm saying if you want to share your experience with the yoni egg, or if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I was just taking my time to respond. Actually, no. I have a little bit more of a radical perspective on this. I don't personally I personally feel that the pussy likes resting, and so I question I question the conditioning and the expectations around people that have a pussy around having to be a certain way. Like I read a lot of like tantric kind of like guide books around like doing different things with the pelvic floor, and it really puts me in a place of feeling like, hey, what happens when we really just let our pussy rest and we don't put anything inside of it, and we instead send the message to our pussy that like they're perfect exactly as they are. So yeah, I'm a little bit more kind of radical with that. So I can't say like this is the thing to get and then this is the thing to do. I'm like, from my perspective, the thing to do is to let them know that they're perfect exactly as they are, and trust that the blossoming and the opening that wants to happen with any kind of like spiritual or sexual modality. I really feel like the blossoming that wants to happen really begins here. Like you could say that all physical disease starts here in the ether. So if you have a physical imbalance in your pussy, the place to begin solving it is here. You know, and like you were saying about the yoni mapping, I really feel like the exploration of relaxation-based pleasure is really like seeing the pussy as like a rose with many petals. And the way that we've been conditioned to come towards our pleasure in Western society is from like the inside out, almost like go in, and you have to go as far in as possible to feel pleasure and to feel anything. And I feel like the relaxation based method is more starting from the outside, starting with as little touch as possible, or starting with energetic penetration and not even being touched until you really feel that your full body is yes to even being touched. And then when you're a yes to even being touched, we're taking our time to really work from here, like down the chakras, all the way down to the base of the body at the end. And I really feel like that is a longer game to play, but it's I feel in the long term, that's the game that the pussy really likes you to be playing, or your yoni, or your cunt, however you like to be referring to your genitalia. I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you, Melissa. And I think what's important to notice there's your own body, and really breathing that life into your own body. Through my kind of cervical awakening, I was really called to energy healing. That's not kind of like your go-to for how to have a cervical awakening, but it was my guidance. My body like deeply sent me to energy healing. So I feel like really tap into your own intuition. If a yoni egg is speaking to you, it's speaking to you because that's on your journey. Then you want to be mindful of how often you're using it and becoming reliant on it and focusing on the relaxation. If a one's speaking to you, it's on your journey. So just allow yourself to feel into, you know, maybe you just want nothing, and that's totally like we're really tapping into that intuition. So that's really important that you said that. Thank you so much, Melissa. You had another question, I think.
Yeah, thank you first of all for both opinions. I think it makes me also think, because it is true, like for me, I think for me it's like also this understanding of sometimes just letting it rest, and also sometimes just using your own hands or your own like you don't need every time like external thing, because I think this is like, as Melissa said earlier, it's like encouraging and unraveling this codependency in something else because we are sourcing it. And this is actually something that is brought me into this thought. Thank you, Melissa, but also thank you for the explanation. And then I would talk about, I think what's really harassing me, and I still didn't get there, is squirting, which I want to achieve first of all by myself and not by someone else. So yeah, I mean, how do I get there? I think for me it's I already experienced like intense full body orgasms, and clitoris, of course, it's not a problem for all of us female bodied. But I think for me, it's more like how to activate really the G spot and how to activate both of them together in order to get there.
Over to you, Shani. I think this is your one.
Cool. I'll take this one. I know we've got a whole session based on this coming up, so make sure you tune in for that one. Melissa's providing the resources for that. But what I will share with that is, so squirting comes about with firm, consistent movement to the G spot, right? But there's so many things that go into it, and it's making sure that you have enough fluids. So it's focusing on the G spot, and stimulating the clitoris will help you. But with that said, there's so much focus on squirting, and I think that actually takes away from the sacredness of what it is. So it's a sense of actually this deep surrender and almost removing the goal to squirt, because we can actually kind of get to this like obsessive, like we just want to squirt, we want to be able to experience it. And when you allow your body to relax into it, you're going to get there naturally. So I would focus more on just awakening the G spot and getting really comfortable with the G spot. And then you can start to focus on stimulating the G spot with either fingers, like quite a pressure, or a wand, or with a partner. But obviously wanting to experience that out of partnership, I would say a wand or fingers. But focus on awakening the G spot, getting really comfortable with that. Focus on the clitoris, and then really removing the goal, and just kind of acknowledging that it doesn't matter if you squirt or not. You know, there's a big obsession with squirting. And I think that also it's that same thing with sound, where we can almost want to force it, like, because it's this like moan and this groan, and it's the same with squirting. So just allowing yourself to kind of acknowledge the sacredness of it and surrender to the need to squirt. And often once we have that, and you just focus on really kind of unraveling and getting familiar with your vulva, you're going to naturally go into that space. So it's quite a journey to get there. Some female bodies experience it really quickly. Some take a little bit more like time and effort and a lot more unraveling. So yeah, just focus on the inside of your body without this like deep need to do it.
Thank you so much. I think it's also, yeah, as you said, it's really important, this like just surrendering without a goal, because if we also like, if we always think about coming, not about squirting now even, then it could also just move it to the side because we're just in our head. And this is, yeah, this is really important point. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. And it's also so normal to be like, it's gonna happen now, you know, like it's so normal. I just want to point that out as well. Like, it is exciting and it's all amazing. Like, obviously we all want all of that, but that's actually where the work is, right? That like deep surrender of just allowing ourselves to stay like super present during pleasure, and super present because it's also not uncommon that we can go from a point of deep orgasm to like crying, you know, from emotional things. So just acknowledging that it's like deep presence that is actually the key with intimacy, and allowing these things to happen. So, but yeah, it's that's where the work is. I mean, I still have to sometimes stop myself and be like, check in, slow down, you know, it's so yeah.
Oh, Shani, I want to add something now. Okay, I feel excited now. I mean, how beautiful would it be if we were as excited about squirting as we were about crying? You know, it's like when you're in any kind of shamanic expulsion ceremony where where you know that you're either going to throw up out your mouth or throw up out your ass, right? If anybody here has done Kambo or any kind of medicine journey that involves cleansing, I really feel like the crying is also squirting, you know, it's like the heart squirting. So so often I know that when I'm crying after an orgasm, that is also the symptom of me having a full body experience as well. And I just wanted to add that as like a little like side inquiry around how beautiful it would be if if we were conditioned that it was like so hot, like, you know, like people are so fascinated about squirting. It'd be so amazing if people were just so fascinated about crying and letting all of their like if emotions were just mega hot, it would just make me very happy. Just wanted to add that. No advice here, just inquiry.
I love that. Thank you, Melissa. And it actually brings it down to this point of like, what is your desire to squirt? Like, why do you want to squirt so badly? And this is also not to kind of put any limelight on the question, because we've all got this desire, right? You know, so it's like, what is the, like, why do we want to squirt, and how can we create that in ourselves? You know, like, how will we feel different when we know we've squirted? Like what is that going to change? What is that going to bring? And then how can we actually create that in self, with or without it? Because often what happens is we can block the body from doing it, because now we start to create this pressure on either self or on partner, and we want to achieve this and that. So how can we just like kind of root that in ourselves and then open to what that experience might be? Yeah. So it's a good question. Does anyone else have any questions that are burning? Yes, Ladybird.
Hi, thank you both for demystifying a lot of things during this call. I really appreciate it, and for being very specific. And I was wondering, and it's a very basic question, and I trust that it will be of interest to others as well. I realize every body is different, but what do you feel when you feel a full body orgasm? Because I've definitely had experiences. I have a lot of nervous energy that goes to my head, and I'll have sort of movements and things. And I've never thought of that as related to this. And so really there's a question of, I don't want to say what does it look like, because I don't want to be attached to it looking a particular way, but really let's talk about what is a full body orgasm, because there's a lot of mystery around it. So thank you.
Good question. Okay, I'm gonna carry on then. So yeah, it's a great question. And I actually loved Melissa's advice earlier of kind of coming back from these orgasms to really experience what they might mean to you. And then from that break, you will start to discover what full body orgasm means to you. So I think you've also answered it in that it looks different for every person. For me personally, full body orgasm looks different every time. It's this way of really opening up to what that situation wants to be. I'm not so particular on like, oh, I just full body orgasm, like, yes. You know what I mean? Sometimes I might not know. I'll just be like, that was radical. Like whatever that was, I don't even care if it has a label of what it was, you know? So I think that's where we need to be so mindful of being attached to like, I just squirted, I just full body orgasm. Whoa, there's the G spot. And like, yes, we want these things help us, but it's a sense of actually being surrendering to what it might be. For me, full body orgasm is particularly when my body is in deep surrender, when I can feel the energy going around my body everywhere. If I'm with self, I can feel it deeply, like all around my body. I'm in this complete state of surrender, from not just in my pussy, but my whole body, my mind. For me, it's almost like this mind explosion as well. So it becomes like this energetic, it becomes this spiritual, it becomes this like deep sense of just like being in bliss. That's what it means to me, you know. But sometimes it's gone into like tears afterwards. Sometimes it's gone into laughing. I've also had full body orgasms during tantric workshops where I've been locked in rage and then open up to ecstasy. There was no penetration, but that was like a full on, like full body awakening. So there's definitely been, for me, it's beyond the physical, and it's as soon as I'm in that natural ecstasy of what's available to us all the time. Really, it might not be my head moving, it might not be, I definitely agree, it's a lot more silent, but it's a lot more of this feeling in my body, of this whole kind of awakening in body. Sometimes it's deeper than others. It looks different every time.
Yeah. may I add on to what you just shared, Shani?
Please.
Thank you. Such a good question. Almost makes me tempted to kind of go all the way around and be like, what's yours like? What's yours like? What's yours like? Some kind of full body orgasm menu. So I feel like there's a part of me that would love to answer from a more kind of soulful perspective, but for a minute, I just want to answer from my opinion on a very physiological, like basic kind of like science perspective, that I believe a full body orgasm experience is when the parasympathetic nervous system is activated and you're turned on. Like turned on by something, whether your heart is turned on by grief moving through it, or whether you're like turned on in your sex by something that's happening to you or thinking about something happening to you. I really believe that it's this combination, this dual model of like, you're super relaxed, there's absolutely no tension in your body, and you know, from this place, energy can move freely through you. And while you're in this relaxed state of having an open channel, of your body being an open vessel for energy to move through it, you're then allowing, or you're then engineering energy to move through you, whether that's consciously, whether you're like consciously doing some kind of practice to really move the energy through you, whether that's conscious because you're making love with someone or making love with yourself, or whether that's totally unconscious because you're in an emotional process and energy is just moving through you. Like you're becoming a vehicle for emotion. So I feel like that's my own kind of practical response of its combination of turn on, I don't really know, like heightened libido and an activated parasympathetic nervous system. And yeah, you definitely do not need to be penetrated or to be penetrating someone or to be having anything happening with your genitals at all in order to have a full body orgasm experience. It's also the reason why I brought a Cal in and why it's a really important sadhana to be doing Kundalini activation, Kundalini tonifying and activating sequences throughout this work together, because I really believe that Kundalini yoga really gives you this energized presence that's very similar to full body orgasm experiences. In fact, a lot of people who have this kind of Kundalini awakening really feel like that is basically a full body orgasm experience, a Kundalini awakening that happens when there's energy moving through the spine and through the body freely in a very kind of, that leaves you feeling a bit high and buzzing after a really intense Kundalini yoga kriya. Yeah, that's my response. Hope that was helpful in some way. What are you feeling, Shani? Are we taking one last question before we close up shop?
If we have one last question, then yes, let's take a last one. Otherwise, we'll ground and close off.
Any last questions for the space before we close up? No. Okay. Oh, Kim. Oh, Thomas.
Oh, yes. It was
maybe a funny question, but how can a male bodied partner, best support their female partner in this? I know it's a very broad question, but something like very practical would be maybe what I'm after.
I like this. Am I going first, Melissa? Cool. So thank you for the question, Tama. And I just love to see all like male bodies here to be able to like learn and to, it just really, it brings me such a joy to see so many interested in learning about different genders, you know, just as much as we all want to show up to learn about the male bodies. That's how we learn and grow. And I think the biggest way that has been somewhat healing for my journey, but also where I would recommend is just deep presence and actually listening to what is going on. So a lot of this work, like you've seen come up, a lot of it's actually a female partner going in herself And I can't even tell you the resistance that comes up. So I obviously deal with a lot of the female bodied people, and they're always sharing their partners. It's the ego, you know, like why can't I be pleasured? So obviously a lot of us are already beyond that, but I would say encouraging self-play, encouraging this kind of connecting to self, going in, and then when comfortable, exploring together. So yoni massage together, talking through things together, just deep presence, like making way to carry on, making way to stop. When emotions arise, speaking through it, like just this deep presence is a way that I felt really allowed me to heal, as well as just sharing where you are on your journey. You know, it's the same as where you would imagine a female partner supporting a man who's trying to, you know, savor his seed. Like, what does she need to do? It's deep presence. It's kind of listening. It's acknowledging on the journey. It's encouraging self-play to be able to deepen in that. So I would almost have the conversations around it, you know, like, what do you need? You know, where can I support? And yeah, you can have a lot of fun with it as well. Like a lot of fun, like sharing experiences, exploring together. It can really bring a deeper intimacy to a connection. So thank you so much for asking that question.
Yeah, wow, such a good question. That's a whole session in itself, isn't it? I like that. My practical response to this is anybody of any gender, any sex, any orientation, making love to a female-bodied person who wants to open the channels in her body so that her cervix opens, is to just relax the front body as much as possible. You know, that front column between her throat and her cervix, between the throat and the cervix, it's essential that that's softened as much as possible. And so literally, like, the most powerful tools for the body should and are tools that a 3-year-old could understand, because when you're in that heightened like eros state, you're not going to like understand all of these complicated breathing techniques. So actually, as their partner in that moment, the most powerful thing you can do is just remind them to breathe. Remind them that it's for them. Really encourage them to go into a space of their own erotic desire. Remind them that it's not about you taking. Remind them that that you're creating a new narrative together that's not about codependency, that's not about consumption, that's just about mutual honoring of each other. And you can simply do that by putting your hand on their belly and just reminding them to soften every single part of their front column, like literally just looking in their eyes and just reminding them to soften their belly. Because also for a lot of female-bodied people, there's a lot of shame in softening the belly, and there's a lot of performance around tightening and clenching the body, that you might be the only person in that interaction who's really aware of that wound in that moment, because it's so deeply ingrained in women. You know, for centuries, it's like we've had to really protect ourselves by being really impressive, by being really slim, and being all of these things that a female body just isn't. A female body is natural and full and wants to just relax and breathe and exhale. So just simply reminding them to exhale, and reminding them to like let their belly be really puffed out and yummy and delicious and full, and reminding them how sexy that is, that they're really relaxed, is probably the most profound thing that a male-bodied person can do, in my opinion. Oof. Let's all take a deep breath together, shall we? Shani, thank you so much for such a beautiful, informative, and rich session. It was so beautiful to share this space with you. And yeah, just to everybody else, have a beautiful day, We have a session tonight at 6 p.m. Central European time with Nick Warner, and it's going to be like this, but for male-bodied pleasure. So I will definitely be there purely out of curiosity, and I hope to see you all there. Otherwise, see you later, loves. Have a beautiful day.